Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle, me, in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. This video is going to be a continuation. Edgar Cayce's Story of Jesus. Series number 112. So I left off on part 1, this is part 2. With some readings and a little bit of the preface. So I'm going to go back and finish the preface and continue on with some readings so that we might see what this man, Edgar Cayce, when he went into a trance, what visions and what thoughts he had or information he obtained from the other side, wherever, Akashic Records, about Jesus and about his own thoughts about doing readings. So here I go. I left off here when, as a child, I prayed that I might be able to do something for the other fellow, to aid others in understanding themselves, and especially to aid children in their ills. I had a vision one day which convinced me that my prayer had been heard and would be answered. I still believe that my prayer is being answered, and as I go into the unconscious condition, I do so with that faith. So I believe that if the source is not wavered by the desires of the individual seeking the reading, it will be from the universe. So something out there in the universe is delivering this information. Of course, if an individual's desire is very intense to have a communication from grandpa, uncle, or some great soul, the contact is directed that way, and that becomes the source. So apparently where you focus your attention when you go into these trances or whatever you're seeking is the source you connect to. If you're willing to receive what Uncle Joe has to say, that's what you'll get. If you're willing to depend on a more universal source, that's what you'll get. When you ask, you will receive. It's a two-edged sword. It cuts both ways. So I suppose people who are seeking to dominate over the rest of us, using Kabbalah, witchcraft, magic, sorcery, etc., they connect to that source. If people are more benevolent, wanting to help other people and save the planet truly, not from the false propaganda of sustainability and biodiversity, which are tools, in my opinion, being used to bring about the new age and a new world order, to bring people and their actions under total control. But back to Edgar Cayce. Okay, a talk given in Washington, D.C., February 3rd, 1935. On the subject of soul power, I have nothing new to offer other than my understanding of what was presented by the man Jesus who became the Christ. Now remember, the word Christ means anointed one. For I am determined that as long as I live, I will know nothing among men save Jesus Christ and Him crucified. For until we crucify our own personal desires, we can never know whether we have a soul or not. What is soul power? Some years ago, I had the privilege of meeting one of the world's best known scientists, a man considered throughout the world as an electrical wizard. So I think he's talking about Nikola Tesla. He said at that time, there isn't such a thing as a soul. It is purely the development of the race ideal. Moving on. Just a few days later, I had a communication from that same man. He said, Cayce, I do not know whether I was right in what I said to you in 1910 or not. we do not know that man has a soul. We cannot prove it with our instruments. Yet when we see the entire world seeking, and seeking, there must be something. And I am convinced that when scientists go to work and study God, just as they have undertaken to study how to make greater conveniences for mankind, we will learn something about the soul, if there is one. And bringing that kind of thought up to date with the CERN Collider, apparently they are opening portals, according to some of the reports, and seeing entities or things. And with the Philadelphia experiment and other videos I've made, it's becoming clearer and clearer that there are other dimensions. And even when flying saucers come into our atmosphere, sometimes in some of the videos you can see a little portal opening and the craft will shoot out of it. And sometimes when they're fleeing away or flying away, in front of them will open up a little portal, maybe like that round thing, that Mayan calendar right there, in the sky but gray, and the thing will shoot right through it and disappear. Who knows? But I keep researching and I keep reporting. So maybe we'll get more information in some of the newer books I've been purchasing, or some of the older books I already have. I am reminded of what a physician asked me not long ago in seeking a reading through me for himself. Would you advise that I affiliate myself with some church so that I may increase my clientele? He asked. I was very much struck by that question. So the guy wanted to join a church just to increase his clientele, which is why a lot of people join the Freemasons and other societies. To be part of something they think is unique, going to gain some insight or great secrets or job connections, whatever. Probably don't do it for the right reasons. Is that why most people go through church these days? That they may be well thought of? That they may improve their material status? Rather than that they may truly be communing with God through their inner selves. If we would truly find the soul, truly acquire soul power, we should let them motivating influence us in us to be the love of God as it manifests itself in our actions towards men. We and others can tell what our motivating influences is by what it makes us do towards our fellow man. So I guess what you do to your fellow man or women or children is kind of what you do to God. And the people who are doing evil things to their fellow man are doing evil things to God, if we're all part of God. And that can't be too good. These people who are into this crazy, insane Pizzagate and child trafficking and so much more horrific stuff, manipulating the stock market, economic collapses, world wars, revolutions, and so much more evil propaganda. There's a reckoning coming for them. If anybody doesn't believe that, they just need to do a little research. And I've got more books on this stuff. Jesus Christ said that the whole gospel is, Jesus Christ said that the whole gospel is, thou shalt love thy Lord, thy God, with all thy heart. And think about it. You walk out in a trail in the woods or go down to the beach, fly in a plane, eat a nice meal. Look at the things in the room behind me. You know, you have a nice life, you live good, and a lot of people in the world are not, and a lot of people are ignoring that. That can't be good. But you see the creation all around you. We do. And you can't help, if you're somebody like me, and you see squirrels and birds and watermelons in a field or a tree full of apples, you can't just say, this, you can't just not say, this is a wonderful, beautiful world that God created. And any God that would create all that and create this body and have my soul spirit be in it to experience this lifetime, you gotta love that God, in my opinion. Unless some people are just haters and want to harm people and don't love God, like apparently a third of the angels that were cast out of heaven and worship Lucifer and Satan and into malevolence, harming other people to a great degree. Look what they've done in the Middle East since 9/11. Look at the insanity in World War I and World War II. People in trenches with machine guns firing at each other. And the truth be known, the Germans did not want to kill the English, and the English did not want to kill the Germans, the citizens. But the powers that be, the puppet masters, they wanted it to happen. There's something bigger at the top of this pyramid, like the all-seeing eye on the dollar bill. So Jesus Christ said, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, thy soul, and thy body, and thy neighbor as thyself." Then all the rest of the Bible is nothing but an explanation of that one sentence. And in my videos I've been saying this. So it's nice for me to find physical supporting information. I know I say it because I remember it, but sometimes you don't remember exactly where you read it. But then again, you can look it up on the computer. Love thy neighbor as thyself, and I'm sure many results will pop up. And you'll see where it's in the Bible elsewhere. So whenever we begin to delve into the motivation, influence within our inner selves, we will have to analyze first our relationship to God, as it manifests itself in our relationship to our fellow man. Now, obviously, God created, if you believe in God, but if God created man, he created all men. So for certain peoples to want to dominate the world and even sacrifice humans or rape children, sacrifice children, and there is this spiritual divine, they're doing this to God too, and I'm confident that it will not be forgotten, that when you do leave this body, you wind up in a place where you deserve to be. We have been admonished by this one and that one, and the other to develop our personality in order to be a power in the world. But if we turn rather within ourselves, where the kingdom of heaven is, what has been the promise? All these things shall be added unto you in their place. So he's quoting some things Jesus said. All that is necessary will be added as we take step after step. For as we use what we know, the next step is given to us. We are all on our way for a development. What did the Master say about our becoming aware of our souls? In patience possess ye your souls. In patience possess ye your souls. How many of us are patient and know that we are patient with our fellow who says or does something nice to us, because we immediately begin to think he wants something from us? That's human nature. Just a little bit of preface here before I get into some more readings. Let's not confuse the term spirit and soul, for they are not the same. I believe in the survival of a personality, yes. I believe it is possible for us to communicate with those who have passed on. But I'm not preaching that we should do it, no. I would prefer, and wouldn't you, going to headquarters for orders, going to God for orders, than to anyone lower. So when these people are communicating with the other side, if they're not praying to God in the name of Jesus, whatever, and they're communicating with these other beings, like Helena Blavatsky and the Secret Doctrine, Albert Pike, Morals and Dogma, Aleister Crowley, the evilest man alive, and the law of one, do as thou wilt, not what God wills. That's what I always say in my videos. Just because people can hear voices or see visions or get dreams or whatever and think they're communicating with some other being, it doesn't mean it's a good being. Could be a very evil being with bad intentions. Just like those girls up in Ohio, I believe, and many other places there's been an increase of possession. But they were playing with a Ouija board, became possessed, and had to be taken away in ambulances and straitjackets. Look this up for yourself. Don't believe me, as usual. Take notes and look up possession, 2016. Demonic possession, 2015. Investigate for yourself, then make up your own mind. Back to the book. Alright, so we'd rather have our orders, and if we pray, you can get information, or things happen in your life when you pray for something. And I always have to say that in my life, with confidence I'll say this, God acts in mysterious ways. Sometimes I think I want to be somewhere, and I know the path how to get there, and it doesn't happen out the way that I thought I would get there. But at some point down the road, I am where I wanted to be. God acts in mysterious ways. Like me doing these videos. Who would have ever thought in my life that I would be doing this for these many years? When I was younger, if you'd have told me that, I'd have thought you were nuts. It's just funny where you may think you're in some kind of trap or depressed or things are not going your way. You might be 22 years old, 31 years old, 45. And boom, if you pray and believe, within months or a year or something, boom, you're in this different place in your life. That's the power of God. And that's me saying that. And I'm reading what Edgar Cayce has to say. But my own personal experience tells me that. If ye ask in my name, believing that shall I give it unto you, do you really believe that? So when you do pray and you ask for God, you need to take your next step forward. And I'm not trying to be a preacher here, just interpreting what Edgar Cayce and the author of this book, Jeffrey Frost, the bottom here, let's give some credit to this guy. Is saying. Of course, we all have to use our God-given brain to see what we think when we finish reading stuff like this. And other books. I read a lot of books. I'm not afraid to read about the occult. Or this one here, the Encyclopedia Judaica. Or forbidden archaeology, all those monuments all over the world. Or Helena Blavatsky's A Secret Doctrine. I've made videos on these. Or the Freemasonic Bible. I'm going to go back and finish more of that Freemasonic pictures and literature in the front of this Bible. And these other books over here. And many more. It takes quite a bit of research and thinking to try to come up with some solid conclusions. So, if ye ask in my name, believing that I shall give unto you, do you really believe it? If so, then we would not be satisfied with anything else. It is true. He has given his angels charge concerning thee. Here's something interesting. It is true. He has given his angels charge concerning thee, lest thee dash thy foot against a stone. So again, apparently we have guardian angels. So I understand. And maybe that's some of the things that just seem to happen in our lives. Maybe there are forces assisting us. It'd be a nice thought, wouldn't it? But still, the gift of this life to live And I realize a lot of people are suffering, and it should be up to us as people and individuals and towns and states and nations to help one another. But apparently, regrettably, the powers that be in our world are not doing that. And it seems like they have very malevolent, evil plans for the rest of us with this new age and new world order. And I know some people just don't want to believe it, but I'll bet you they didn't look into it sincerely. Watch some of my videos or other people's videos. Get yourself, like I do, a pad, a notepad, and start taking notes. And once you start looking into these things, things will pop up in front of you. Boom, boom, boom. Just like certain videos seem to come out of nowhere for people. There is something bigger happening. But from whom do we want our orders? And how may we receive them? Prayer is one of the big things. How may we receive? Through the awareness of that within us which is eternal. We may receive them through the awareness of what within us is eternal, our soul. Only our soul. And remember, in your brain you have two halves, the left side and the right side. The left side of the brain, if you go look this up on the computer, left brain, right brain, you'll see many pages and websites. The left side is this reality that you see around me. Wherever you are, look around your room, look outside at the trees, talk to your neighbor, friend. That's this frequency level of reality. A slow reality. But the right side of the brain operates at a super, not infinite, but an almost infinite higher frequency. And it's what connects to the higher world. So people are left-brained or right-brained. And when you are walking down the street, and maybe like I did when I was younger in Florida, and walking down a country road, and I'm daydreaming, looking forward, and all of a sudden I freeze. Why did I freeze? And I look down, I'm about to step on a rattlesnake. That's happened to me. And many other things, we get these warnings or alertness, even when you're in a car, and all of a sudden, for some reason, you're paying attention to something and brake. It's intuitive. Some people get this so strong, they were about to board a plane, and they get this intuitive feeling, don't board that plane. And you can look this stuff up again, too. And there's books on this stuff. And so they don't get on the plane, and the plane crashes. So the right side is connected to some kind of the other invisible realm. Like in the pictures I've shown, in the books I've read, Carlos Castaneda, The Separate Reality. And I guess what all this stuff I'm talking about in all my videos with Freemasonry and Satanism, you know, in this other reality, apparently there are better firmaments or better dimensions, more, I guess heaven would be one of them. And then there are lesser ones or places for certain people that are not so nice. And I've made videos on psychic research where they did readings and talked to people on the other side. And some people who were good in life, like a doctor, he would report in the reading that he just thought it was so awesome. He wished he could leave that world and come back into this world just to tell everybody. So he wound up in a very nice place. But then somebody else who was a bad person, when they were summoned in a seance, which were popular in the 1800s, 1700s, they would describe a very gloomy, unhappy place. I never really had heard of anybody being contacted in hell, where they, in the seance, they're saying they're roasting and burning in fire. But I have, in the psychic research, there have been many readings where people who were not known for not being very nice in this life, thieves or whatever else, and a harmful person to people, where they wound up, they were still very depressed and very unhappy and didn't like it. Obviously, they didn't learn anything in this life. That's why they wound up there, and maybe they'll be reincarnated, put in a particular position to try to get them to see the right way to think and act. Who knows how they prepare souls for heaven? I guess you can't just have baby souls go there that might be radical and revolutionary and troublesome. What world would heaven be like if that's what they did? Why in the Bible did they have the revolution? And a third of the angels, along with Lucifer or whatever, were cast out, demons. Where did they go if they were cast out? Just stop you think about if you start thinking. All right, back to the book. Sometimes I get rambling on, I lose my place. So here we go. What is the power of the soul? Then, all that is within the infinite itself. So if we're connected to the infinite, just think of the possibilities. All of that, it is ours. He has given it to us. So all of this in the infinite, God has given to us. What is every man's birthright? What did Esau sell for a mass of pottage? His inheritance. He sold that awareness that he might approach the throne of God itself. For what? To satisfy the cravings for the body at the moment. And that's what we're doing every day, isn't it? We are so pressed by the things of outer self. I apologize here. Sometimes it's a little awkward to read somebody else's writing, if that's not the way you speak. Or outer world. So we are so pressed by and things of the outer self, the outer world, the material world. What did the Master say about the seed that was sown in one place? The cares of this world come in and crowd it out until there is nothing left. I'm only reading my highlighted portions here. Can't we accept and then live the truth expressed in my Father's house are many mansions? That's what Jesus said. If it were not so, I would not have told you. That's what Jesus said. And I go to prepare a place for you. That's what Jesus said. I'm adding the part, that's what Jesus said. And where I am, there ye may be also. So wherever this heaven is that Jesus promises us, if we believe in him, we will be saved, and there we will go. So this is a choice these people with the New Age and the New World Order don't want you to know. Remember, this series is Freemasonry and Satanism. I believe there's a grand plan, a grand deception taking place. And according to prophecy, a grand deception was prophesied to take place. So what the Bible says was going to happen is happening. I think few people can deny that. There's books about that too. It's somebody taking notes and saying, oh my God, everything that was prophesied, when I go back and look, it happened. It happened. It happened again. It happened here. It happened there. It just keeps on happening. You can't argue with the Word of God in the different religious books. You can try. If we were anxious about where we came from, as we are about where we are going, we would be in quite a different position as to what we are doing with ourselves now, wouldn't we? Again, how did I wind up making these videos? I guess intuitively, many years ago when I saw after 9/11. But I was always kind of a person that people made fun of and said that I was a good guy, which I thought was kind of odd to poke fun at me for that. But I could see, as a businessman and a reader of books and a guy who got out in the world, that things weren't right. When I went to see clients in my business and financial statements were nosediving and people were losing their home in Argentina, Canada, Florida, California, Germany, statistically speaking, and you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure this out, I said to myself, you can't have stupid managers in all these places why things are falling apart. Somebody must be planning this. That was my thoughts. So when I started my investigation, that's all I was trying to figure out. What the heck is going on? What's real? I wasn't a particularly seriously religious person. I believed in God. I believed in Jesus. I believed in being a good man, not stealing or killing and all that. And I thought that was good enough. And I left it to other people to take charge, like the rest of us. And these people who do take charge of our local governments, state governments, national governments, countries, apparently those people have evil ambitions. And they're put in those places where they are groomed through secret societies and organizations. We've got a monster of a evil network, pyramidal structures set up. And I've made many videos with this information. There's many videos on YouTube. Look up Satanism, look up Illuminati, look up New World Order. There's not a shortage of information about this. Something bad is coming, looming. You can almost see it like a mirage if you want to pay attention. And a lot of people will say it, even down at the grocery store. Everywhere you go, they'll go, man, it's a crazy world. All right. In a letter from an individual several thousand miles away, whom I had tried to aid with the information coming through me as a channel, she said, I have regained my health through following the suggestions you gave. But most of all, my husband and I have found God. I am now ready to die any day, but praise God, I am living for something. So even William Cooper, Bill Cooper, who wrote Beware of a Pale Horse, he said, if you're not prepared to die for something, you're not living. And I'll say, Rick Miracle, that I am convinced of the spiritual realm, that we're spiritual beings in these biological bodies. And it doesn't make me fear death. It's like, when I leave this body, I'm returning home. And according to the Bible, if you believe in Jesus, you're going to Jesus' home, that heaven, with the many mansions. I'm sure, I know I'm not a saint. I haven't done everything right in my life. But I'd like to be a little bit more grounded in my thinking and understand. And my research has helped me to get there. Again, I'm not trying to preach. Just having a conversation about some of the stuff I'm reading and what I think. If you know what it is to bring that into the meaning of a person's life, so Edgar Cayce is saying if him doing that, bringing that into the meaning of a person's life, you realize, as I cannot tell you, that there is such a thing as a soul. If you don't, just go out and do a kindness and a good deed. So if you do go out of your way and look, I'm sure people have families and friends and neighbors, and all of us know somebody with some turmoil or problems. And I realize sometimes helping people may be fruitless and they don't seem to appreciate it, but it's not about that. It's just about trying to help and helping. Whether they appreciate it or not is not your problem. But do a good deed. Go out there and help somebody. Give somebody some money if you know they need it. Put it in an envelope, in an unmarked envelope. Don't let them know where they got it from. Be satisfied they got it. You helped them. Things like that. Food, care packages, elderly people. Speak up against the wars overseas in the Middle East. Write a letter to your congressman, senator, saying that you think it's horrible that they continue to do this over there. and other things that you can probably learn about and pray about. All right, Edgar Cayce got me off on a rambling here. As ye do unto the least of these my brethren, ye do it unto me. So again, whatever you do to help people that are in need, you're doing unto God. I guess you could say you're putting some karma, some good karma in the bank, which maybe we all could use. I can. What is the soul? It is the God force in the weakest of our brethren, in the lowest of our fellow man. So even the evil people have souls. And when we do an unkindness to another individual, we do not hurt the individual, but we hurt God and ourselves. When do we dishonor God? When we do an unkindness, say an unkind word about our fellow man. And I know it's difficult all the time to be good, especially when some people do certain things to us. But you have to remember, you have to be bigger than that. What will make us aware of the soul? When we become God-minded and conscious of the fact that we are our brother's keeper. What was the excuse for the first man who did a wrong to another? Am I my brother's keeper? Many of us try to hide behind something to prevent our own conscience from hurting and say, well, I don't have to worry about that. That's his job. If he is a living being that is wandering, disturbed, then it is our job. So if we see people who need a little guidance or help, and in a lot of cases it's young people, they're growing up in a world that's a bit bizarre, you think? When we come in contact with him, if we want to know God at all, how may we use our soul power? By manifesting the fruits of the Spirit, which are kindness, patience, long-suffering, just doing those things we would like to have done to us. No matter how many fancy names we give to it, that's what is necessary when we come right down to it. And if we seek first these fruits of the Spirit, to manifest them in our lives towards our fellow man, all other things will be added unto us, and we will be expressing the soul power within us. Know ye not that your bodies are the temples of the living God? Know ye not that your bodies are the temples of the living God? So if your body possesses a soul, and the soul is from God's world, and he's given us a gift to have our souls in these bodies, to have this life, to go out and go to the beach, to have some pizza, to have some friends, go water skiing, whatever people enjoy doing. Living, breathing, seeing deer, animals, squirrels, birds, whales, whatever, life, challenges, accomplishments. And you think about all that and you go, wow, God gave me an awesome gift. Of course you would love God. That's what I think. Anyways, back to what Edgar Cayce thinks. Whenever we remain in a prayerful, meditative state, asking him to meet us there, we may gain that which, if applied in our daily lives, gives us the knowledge of the power of God in all its beauty. When I do all my book reviews and I read about the horrible things that happened to people during the Crusades, children being abducted, and certain people, Zionist people, secret societies, working against the rest of us, I don't hate all those people. I pray to God that they see the light and they turn their ways. And I share all that investigation because I want other people to wake up and pray to God. And believe it or not, and I've read this in many places and listened to many speakers on many videos say, if many of us woke up and pray to God and be the person that we want everybody else to be, the world to be, we have to start with ourselves. Then we would change the world. That's the power of the soul. I'm adding this. One more page on the preface. Can we ever become aware of our soul power by finding fault with someone else? Suppose God found fault with us. Should we wonder that we suffer when we consider how many hard things we have said about people? But what has he promised? If ye will take my yoke upon you and learn of me, ye shall find rest on your soul. So you break out the Bible and just start reading a couple of the books in the New Testament. Not very many pages to read the Gospel of Mark or Luke or Matthew. The ones I made video on. What, 10 pages? And I believe it kind of connects you to the higher power. It gives you something to ponder and think about. And it's almost like taking medicine for your soul and your body. You get connected. You get less depressed, less unhappy. You get more hopeful. You see the light. Sounds like I'm preaching here, but I'm just doing it as a scientist. That's the reality of soul power. Where do you want to be connected to? Who do you want to listen to? You know, you want to go to school or get a good job and be a good employee? Or do you want to join a local hoodlum gang and raid the neighborhood? What do you think is better? Obvious, we all know the answer, but still some people go to the dark side. Alright. He has promised to meet with us and talk with us, to bring to our remembrance all things even from the beginning, if we will only listen to that voice from within, using what we have today and that necessary for tomorrow, will be added in its due time. So when you are praying for something, you are in a difficult hardship, or whatever it is, have some patience, say the prayers, and in my case, God acts in mysterious ways, but I wind up getting what I wanted, where I wanted to be. It may not be the way that I thought about it, but later on, looking back on it, I can see that the higher power, God, knew more than me about what I needed. We may become aware of the soul power within our inner self. Many of us in our suffering have doubted the ability of the Christ consciousness to arouse us to the necessary activity in our daily life. But the experience of the world has been from the very beginning, the Lord thy God is one. So I believe even God said to Israel, "Know, Israel, the Lord the God is one." What destroyed the people of Atlantis? Same God. Or in any nation in which we have any record. You know, what did the Atlantis, what is the historic stories about that? Weren't they into cloning, almost creating monsters and slaves and sex slaves and so much? So when things get so bad, things get wiped out, and a bunch of souls get recalled, and later on maybe get reincarnated, so the evil will be smited out eventually, according to the way I see it. And regrettably, with this new age and new world order in the U.S. and the TV programming and movies and media and school teachings and all that, somebody is trying to get the peoples of the USA and Europe and the world to go down the evil path. And those somebodies that are doing that obviously know universal law and karma. And they know we will wind up creating our own destruction by our own actions, even though we don't even know what we're doing. All I'm saying, and I continue to say it with this series, Freemasonry and Satanism, there are evil, malevolent forces at work, And they've created this dielectric, which means two opposing forces, Democrats, Republicans, gays and straights, blacks and whites, old and young, rich and poor, one country against another country, and other tools that they can go ahead and go to one side and whisper and say nasty things about the other side. And then they go to the other side and they say nasty things about these side. And they create the hatred, but it's some puppet master forces that are doing this. Not God. Why does God allow it? Maybe it's part of a tool to give people choices to educate souls. Speculating here. A lot of people would like to know why God allows it. But apparently He doesn't allow it forever, because like Atlantis or Rome or other things, Israel being destroyed and the people sent all over the world. So apparently God does take action, but patience is probably the key. And remember, we're all spiritual beings in these biological bodies. The worst that the evil forces can do is kill our physical bodies. They can't take our souls. We can only surrender our souls. That's important to know. So when I get back to the readings that Edgar Cayce does for people, all this preface information might be a little helpful. All right. Those that would know God must first believe that He is, and then just act like it, and they will become aware of the God consciousness within themselves that make all as one. And I have read, FYI, that in the Bible, I'm not quite sure where I read it, but you do need to watch your thoughts. A lot of thoughts that get put in your head are not your thoughts. These spiritual entities and beings and forces are alive. And they can plant thoughts in your head, and you know as a person what's a good thought and a bad thought. And that's why in the Lord's Prayer it says, "Lead me not into temptation." Why does it say that? And deliver me from evil. Why does it say that? Because apparently the temptation is put in front of all of us, and these evil forces are sending those messages, trying to get us to go off on a path that we know is wrong. Later on, how many of us have said, "Man, I wish I hadn't have done that. I know better than that." But we follow those thoughts. The spiritual world is real. Or left brain, right brain. The right brain is operates on a significantly higher frequency, connected to the evil world and the good world, everything. But we can go down the paths we want to go. Just like in the books I've gone over on remote viewing. Remote viewers have even testified. When you leave your body and you go out there, you've got to be careful. You're going to see some strange things. And other books that I've already gone over, Psychic Self-Defense with Dion Fortune. Rabbi Marvin Antleman, To Eliminate the Opaque. Your belief in God. The evil forces don't want you to believe in God. We have much more control over our reality than we know. In many cases, I should continue to remind my own self of that. We're all not the strongest people. Things can happen and we get this fear thing, or we're afraid we won't come up with the money to pay the bills, or this or that, or something might happen, the gloom and doom. But again, all that can kill is the physical body, not the spiritual body. Even if a gigantic wave comes and takes out a whole city, Planet X or Nibiru or earthquakes, if you're connected with God, it really is not such a horrible thing. You know where you're going to wind up, and you'll maybe reincarnated again if that's the way it works, whatever. But you'll wind up in the right place in God's world, Jesus' world. If we all thought that way, it'd be a lot better off. Then, those things that are spiritual must permeate the body. the mind and the soul. So when you think that way, and you're aware, and you're paying attention to thoughts, and you go, well, wait a minute, that's not my thought. If we would make ourselves one with God, even as the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are one, how great is the soul power? It is everlasting, for it is the gift of God in every individual. Like begets like. Good begets good. I'm adding that part. We must love him and keep his commandments if we would truly know him and the soul power within each of us and the soul power that is within each of us. So we need to be aware of that. All right, so I ended the preface. Thank you for dealing with all that. Now I can get back to some readings where I left off on the readings. Well, this ought to be interesting. Let's talk about in the beginning, Genesis. What does it say about man's creation? Who were involved? Who were these evil, malevolent forces? What did they do? Edgar Cayce, Story of Jesus. So let me try to take you there and read some of this and see what we think after. In the beginning, and this stuff was in the Bible, by the way, is in the Bible. In the beginning was the Word. And what is a word? A word, if you hold your hand up to your mouth, you can feel the vibrations. Or if you record it on a recorder and look at it on an oscilloscope, you can see the signals. Words are vibrations. Vibrations are energy, and they can be coded. You think about things like incantations, abracadabra, hocus pocus, magic. And there's a lot of that in the stuff I'm going to go over in my videos about the Kabbalah, witchcraft, sorcery, and magic. In the symbols, the circles with the stars, witches symbols, amulets, and all kinds of other things. Words. So in the beginning was the Word. The Word was God. The Word was with God. He moved. Hence, as he moved, souls, portions of himself came into being. So are we all portions of the God's soul? I'm not saying I believe this. I grew up as a Christian. I'm trying to understand. But Edgar Cayce went into trances, got his information from the other side. Somebody wrote this book. So it's worthy of a conversation. Do I believe I'm a spiritual being in a biological body? Absolutely. As well as everybody else. The entity, so he's talking about a reading now, an entity 2497. I guess all these entities have numbers. That's how they catalog them. Was in the beginning when all were in the spiritual force. So he's doing a reading to somebody. You were there in the beginning. When the morning stars sang together in the glory of the coming of the Lord to make possible the developing of man's influence in the world. Remember, when Jesus was born, the three kings that showed up because they saw the star. And they followed the star and showed up at Jesus' birthplace, at the manger. And in my other books I go over, in the Talmud and its other books, they mock that. So what is the truth when I go over the things that say bad things about Jesus and the things that say good things about Jesus and good things about us and everybody else in creation? Before the entity, 341, was among those when the forces of the universe came together. When upon the waters there was the sound of the coming together of the sons of God. The morning stars sang together. Over the face of the waters there was the voice of the glory of the coming of the plain for man's indwelling. I thought this was interesting. The coming of the plain of man's indwelling. So are we on a sphere hurtling through space at 66,000 miles an hour around the sun while we're rotating 1,000 miles an hour? Or as this says here for this reading 341, the glory of the coming of a plane for man's indwelling. Or are we on a plane and on a domed reality? Could NASA actually shoot space shuttles through that dome? I think not. It says here, if you read first 5 and 6 verses at the beginning of the first chapter of Genesis in the Bible, and in the 3rd verse understand what it means that the knowledge is within thyself, the light necessary for yourself to be one of the best man God ever created. So we all have the potential to be a great man or great woman or great person if we want to. The potential's in each one of us. And the next one I highlighted, reading 28:79. For thyself came not merely by chance, for the earth is a causation world. The earth is a causation world. In the earth, cause and effect are the natural law. I've been saying that. Karmatic law. You do bad things, it's going to come back to you as a bad thing to you. You do good things, it's going to come back to you. For did the Master Jesus come by chance? Or was it not according to the preparation made from the very foundation of the world? So is all this planned? Jesus' arrival at the age of Pisces? Going through the age of Pisces, now we're entering the age of Aquarius. Is all this, these stages planned? Apparently so. And planned for what? Apparently for soul growth. Alright, reading 50:56. Before we find the entity was in the Atlantean land. So this person he's doing a reading for was in the Atlantean land. And in those periods before Adam was in the earth. The entity was among those who were the thought projections. So I've gone over books over thought forms. We'll be looking at this Kabbalistic and all this stuff further. An entity 1857 here, reading 1857. Among those who first came into Earth's sphere, so now he's calling it a sphere. And the other thing, it was a plane. So can a domed area be called a sphere? Before it became habitable to human life. So he's doing a reading for somebody, telling him he was among those. Only then, as vision, did the entity view the Earth's sphere, and passed to the other spheres about the Earth. So this entity came to Earth before it was developed, didn't stay, just viewed it, and went to the other spheres of the Earth. Whether we concur or disagree with Cayce concerning the story of creation, we must necessarily go back to Genesis and other books in the Old Testament, and also the legends associated with the fall of the angels prior to the coming of Adam, in order to fully interpret Edgar Cayce's story of Jesus. The story as reconstructed from the readings is that there was indeed an initial fall in spirit by numerous entities who came within the earth's sphere. So in the beginning there was an initial fall of the spirit by numerous entities who came within the earth's sphere. So way before we people today in 2017, and who knows how many of us, we souls, who may be reincarnated, are involved in that reality back then. Just interesting conversation again. These spirit entities or souls came and began playing at creation. So these souls came and started playing at creation, projecting themselves into the material earth as thought forms. So these initial beings came to earth as thought forms and projected themselves into material things, into the very rocks and trees, coexisting within various mineral and life forms, both animal and vegetable. Here the souls eventually became so enmeshed and hardened into the material diversions and creations of their own making that they ultimately lost their conscious identity of being creatures or creations of God. In that particular experience, there still were those who were physically entangled in the animal kingdom with the appendages of cloven hoofs, with 4 legs, and with portions of trees, with tails and scales, with those various things that thought forms had so indulged in as to separate the purpose of God's creation of man as man and not as an animal. And we all remember mythology with the half horse and half man, mermaids and all this other stuff. So apparently somebody was, like we said about Atlantis from my studies, somebody was dabbling in genetics and cloning and stuff like that, and creating some hideous monsters, which apparently is why they had the Great Flood. And the giants, the skeletons they find all over the world, even other kinds of alien beings. So are they doing that again? And would that explain the UFO, aliens, reptilians, and creatures today? What kind of forces with superior knowledge are operating in the background, creating yet again, trying to create yet again, a hideous world? And what did God do in the past? He had to erase it. Start over. So it's my understanding, Atlantis, the Great Flood. According to the readings, these individuals became known in the story of Genesis as the sons of man. Other souls, not trapped in the material earth, were aware of this situation and chose to enter the earth plane in order to aid the entities who had lost their identity and awareness of the Creator. The second wave of souls became known as the sons of God and were led into the earth by the entity we know as the Master Jesus. So before Jesus, his soul was in Jesus, that entity was working earlier, much earlier, towards aiding souls on earth. The readings make numerous reference to the sons of man as being entrapped in some strange, grotesque bodies, curiously reminiscent of ancient legends of centaurs, stars, of men with wings and feathers, hoofs, claws, half fish, part tree, demonic spirits encased as dragons, reptiles, and other weird, hideous beasts. Huh. What's that saying? It happened before, it'll happen again. Look at the world right now. There's trying to convince us that there are alien beings coming from other planets to save us. Palladians. You got your Palladians, your tall whites. Zeta Reticuli aliens. Insectoids. The Anunnaki from Nibiru. The Archons. The Grey Aliens. Nephilim. The Watchers. The aliens from Sirius star system. The Lions, the lion people, feline race. The Arcturian alien race. The black-eyed children. The Andromeders, the reptilians. And on and on. The entity, he's doing another reading, was among the children of the law of one. Those that were the sons of man, yet of the daughters of the Lord, or those who had become purified of those entanglements in the animal forces that became manifest among many. Some brought about monstrosities. So the sons of God mated with the daughters of man. Some brought about monstrosities, as those of its association with beasts of various characters. Hence, these are the Styx, Styr, S-T-Y-X, I'll have to look that up, and S-A-T-Y-R, these beings, and the like, those of the sea, or mermaids, those of the unicorn, and those of various forms. So in the beginning, these beings from the God world decided to mate with earth women and created quite a assorted variety of beasts, and even mating with other objects and animals. According, the sons of God set themselves to working at creation also in accord with divine guidance, and fashioned and evolved the flesh bodies which were intended to be the channels of man's eternal release from the material being. I'm only reading my highlighted portions here, so I'm not reading it all, but some pages it looks like I am. Moving on here. Then the earth brought forth seed in her seasons, and man appeared in 5 places at once. The 5 senses, the 5 reasons, the 5 spheres, the 5 developments, the 5 nations. Guess that would be 5 races. How many races are there? Did the appearance of what became the 5 races, that's what it says here, did the appearance of what became of the 5 races occur simultaneously? So there's a questionnaire sitting by Cayce while he's in a trance, asking these questions. Edgar Cayce says, and it's not Edgar Cayce, he's connected to the other world. He says, they occurred at once. The questionnaire says, are the places designated for the beginning of the 5 races correct? Answer from Cayce in a trance. The answer is coming from the Akashic records or something from the other dimension. As we find, those in the Gobi, the yellow, the white, or in the Carthaginians, the red in the Atlanteans, so you got yellow people, white people, and red people. And in America, the brown in the Andrea, and the black in the plain of Sudan or in Africa. So you had the black race all occurring at once, brown, red, yellow, and white. This emergence of the 5 races was parcel to the essential plan whereby the sons of God could assist the sons of man in the return to consciousness of being with and through the Creator. And so the stage was set for the entering into Atlantis of Jesus as Emilius, or the Atman, or the first Adam. So the spirit of Jesus was first on earth back then there. So if we do raise our consciousness, which apparently God wants us to do, and the way to do it is to be God conscious and be a good person, treat other people as you would want to be treated, and what you do to other people you actually do to God. If you can attain consciousness back to God, apparently you become a much more intelligent, aware, conscious being with probably superior abilities. So where does all that have to say about the Kabbalah and the people into the secret societies teaching all this stuff, black magic and witchcraft? What is it they know they don't want the rest of us to know? Why did Rabbi Marvin and our Enthelman, I think I need to stop speaking for a few minutes, write those 2 volumes to eliminate the opaque, which is to eliminate your belief in God and your prayer? Obviously, there are forces that don't want the rest of us to wake up and have the consciousness and the superior psychic abilities and knowledge. They're afraid of that. They have to put fluoride on the water. They have to calcify our pineal gland. They're going to have to microchip us. They're going to have to kill a lot of people, purge the intelligent people, probably burn books like this. The evil forces don't want the rest of us to wake up. That's my saying that. I'm reading this and I'm thinking. In the period that some 198,000 years before the entry of Ram into India, there lived in the land of Atlantis one Amelius, who had first noted the separations of the beings as inhabited that portion of the earth's sphere, or plane of those peoples. So now he's calling it that portions of earth's sphere, or plane of those peoples, into male and female as these separate entities or individuals. So these people were evolving into men and women. How is the legend of Lilith, the legendary first woman, connected with the period of Amelius in Atlantis? In the beginning, as was outlined, there was presented that which became the sons of God, in that male and female were as in one, with those abilities for those changes as were able and capable of being brought about. Just reading my highlighted portions. So what was the question here? How is the legend of Lilith? Turning the page. That there might be no change in the relationship of the sons of God with those relationships with the sons and daughters of men. So we do have higher creations, entities, sons of God, interacting with the sons of daughters of men. So there are other entities messing with our reality, some of them trying to help us, angels or whatever, and some of them are apparently trying to not have us awaken our consciousness. They do not want us to awake up to God in consciousness, to raise our own abilities beyond the 5 senses, to evolve upward into consciousness, psychic abilities, manifesting, who knows? It's an interesting story. Question: what was meant by the sons of the highest in Atlantis and the second coming of souls to the earth? Answer. And again, I'm not reading it all, just my highlighted portions here. You can go get the book. Used book sites, new book sites, if you're interested. That's why I do book reviews. Trying to show people that the information is out there if you want to look for it. Alright, what does it say here? There was, with the will of that as came into being, through the correct channels, so we all have a will. something we can will something. And if you believe in God and you ask God for something and you believe it, will it, it can change your life and it can be manifested. Again, people who learn the universal laws, and especially with the secret societies and cults, and are using those abilities, secrets, against us, is the problem that I'm talking about. So anyways, there was with the will as came into being through the correct channels of that as created by the Creator. That of the continuing of the souls in its projection and projections and projection C. While in that as was of the offspring of that as pushed itself into form to satisfy, gratify that of the desired of the known as carnal forces of the senses. So the spiritual entities were entering into material forms. Of those created, there continued to be the war one with another, and then there were from the other sources, worlds, the continuing entering of those that would make for the keeper of the balance, keeping of the balance. And hence the second, or the continued entering of souls into that known as the earth's plane again. It calls earth's plane here. During this period for that activity as was brought about. So are we living on a plane or a sphere hurtling through space? That's the question I'd like answered. When these are overbalanced so that the body physical, the mental man, the imagination of its heart, is evil, or his purpose is evil, then is that war continuing. So when men's minds are evil, war continues. As from the beginning, just the continued warring of those things within self as from the beginning, for with these things as brought sin into the world, with the same came the fruits of same, or the seeds of the sin. So we reap what we harvest. So when people do evil things to the world, like is going on now, all this destruction in the Middle East and the propaganda taught to all the young people and the people of the world, taking people down the dark path of service to self. You can do anything you want, like Aleister Crowley taught, known as the evilest man alive. The outcome cannot be too good, according to this material, which we see in the material world as those things that corrupt good ground, those that corrupt the elements that are of the compounds of those of the first causes, or elements and pests are seen, and the like see. Alright, another question. What was meant by, as in the first Adam, sin entered, so in the last Adam, all shall be made alive? Adam's entry into the world in the beginning then must become the Savior of the world. So this book is saying that Jesus at that time came into the world as the Savior of the world. Which is interesting, because I'm going to go back to the Jesus in the Talmud, Midrash, and Zohar, and some other books, and they don't say kind things about Jesus, but it's obvious they hate Jesus, and they hate all Christians, and they hate all non-themselves. They even hate people of their own kind who don't think like they do. I'm talking about the Zionist Jewish people who hate the good Jewish people who want to adhere to Moses' 10 Commandments. So you got these people that got into the Kabbalistic studies, religion, theosophy, whatever, black magic sorcery. This is documented throughout history. They were the advisors to kings and queens and manipulators and sinister men and women. And it isn't just Jewish people, the bad ones, not the good ones. Believe me, a majority of Jewish people on the planet today, if they knew about this, they would be up in arms too. They don't want to see the world to turn into a blazing flame of fire. What good is that going to do them? They don't want to leave this world and wind up in some kind of burning hell. Hopefully none of us do. So, Adam's entry into the world in the beginning then must become the Savior of the world. Be then fruitful, multiply, and subdue the earth. Hence Emilius, Adam, and first Adam, and last Adam, becomes then that is given the power over the earth, and as in each soul, the first to be conquered is self. So each of us have to conquer ourselves. Then all things, conditions, and elements are subject unto the self. So if you conquer yourself, you gain some serious abilities. That's not the easiest thing to do, to conquer yourself. To put your own selfish needs aside and look for the bigger picture. Look for God. I'm adding that part. And I'm learning as I go here. My conversations are for just the normal person out there. You don't have to be an elitist or attend some super college to be able to have a little ability to think, to be a bit of a philosopher and ponder this stuff. I like to make my videos for the common man and woman and children so that they can wake up and see the reality around them. And if we all do this, according to this material, we have much more power that can be imagined, and I suppose that would explain some of the computer monitoring of people and spying and the plans for a new world order, new age, microchipping, and the death of a lot of people. The evil forces are aware of this information also. Make no mistake about that. Remember, they have secret societies. They're not allowed to divulge those secrets under threat of having their throat cut, killed, and other horrible tortures and murder. John Kennedy, President John Kennedy, he said secret societies are repugnant to the way of life in America. And he was going to expose it. He knew about the evil forces. And what did they do to him? They were afraid. So you have to conquer yourself. Then all things, conditions, and elements are subject unto thyself. That's a universal law. According to Edgar Cayce here, not me. I'm doing a book review. As may be seen in that as may be demonstrated either in gases that destroy one another by becoming elements of the same, and that in the mineral or in the animal kingdom as may be found that destroy or become one with the other. Hence, as Adam given, the Son of God, so he must become that would be all able to take the world, the earth, back to that source from which it came. And all power is given in his keeping of the earth, that he has overcome self, death, hell. It says hell here. He has overcome self, death, hell, and the grave even, become subservient unto him through the conquering of self, in that made flesh. For as in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the same in the beginning, the Word came and dwelt among men, and the offspring of self in the material world. And the Word overcame the world, and hence the world became then as the servant of that overcame the world. Did you catch all that? Take some thinking, take some reading. Another question given to Edgar Cayce. Please give the important incarnations of Jesus in the world's history. The answer. In the beginning was Amulus, as Adam, as Malachinetzi, as Zend, as Ur, as Asaph, as Joshua, as Joseph, as Jesus. Those are Jesus' reincarnations. Then, as the coming into the world in the second coming, for he will come again, Jesus, and receive his own who have prepared themselves through that belief in him. So if you believe in Jesus, you have prepared yourself. In acting in the manner, so you have to also act in the manner, treat other people how you want to be treated, love one another, love God. For the Spirit is abroad and the same time draws near, and there will be the reckoning of those even as in the first, so in the last, and the last shall be first, for there is that Spirit abroad. He standeth near, yet that hath eyes to see, ye that hath eyes to see, let him see. He that have ears to hear, let him hear the music of the coming of the Lord in this vineyard. And art thou ready to give account of that thou hast done with thine opportunity in the earth as the sons of God, as the hairs and joint hairs of the glory of the Son? Skipping some stuff here, reading the next highlighted paragraph. And those that are faithful and just in their reckoning shall be caught up with him to rule and to do judgment for 1,000 years. So that's what Edgar Cayce says. Alright, we're about an hour and a half into this video. So I'll do a little more and wrap it up. Interesting information. Says here, those that are faithful and just in their reckoning shall be caught up with him to rule and to do judgment for 1,000 years. So believe in Jesus. Try to be a good person. We're all going to make mistakes. And there's a promise in a reading. Here it says, continuing on, in the above reading, Cayce ties in and relates the Alpha and Omega concept of Christ from Genesis to Revelation in an extremely interesting and understandable manner. Indeed, the entire series of readings on the book of Revelation is in itself a worthwhile separate study. Therein Cayce relates to the Revelation of John. That would be the last book of the Bible. Not too many pages. Go and read it. As a symbolic allegory of the human body's structure and evolvement to the ultimate Christ consciousness within, all related to the promised second coming of the Master. So I think it's supposed to be preceded by an Antichrist. I've got more studying to do. The Atlantean period, as revealed in the readings, can also well entail a full story of its own. I've got one of Edgar Cayce's book on Atlantis. We'll look at that. Its significance within our text is related to the references of Jesus as Emilius, plus the overall plan for soul development and the eventual return or at-one-ment of all souls with the Creator. So what are we to believe? Who is Edgar Cayce communicating with? In the days when the suns came together, in the first of the morning light by the earth's sun, this entity was among those who gathered to worship the sun. Aha! Sun worship here. Here is a rational basis for the sun worship, still current among some primitive groups, is implied, with the sun as a symbol of the Creator. Question. Please explain the statement given in Genesis. In 6 days God made the heaven and the earth. So here's Edgar Cayce in a trance. Let's see what he has to say about that. That each may interpret this accordingly to his own comprehension, let each become aware of the power of the Father in his manifestations in the earth. When it is considered, as was later given or written, even before this was written, that 1,000 years is as but a day, and a day is but 1,000 years in the sight of the Lord. Then it may be comprehended that this was colored by the writer's desire to express to the people the power of the living God, rather than the statement of 6 days as man comprehends days in the present. So, it says here, a day is 1,000 years, and God created the earth in 6 days. Was it 6,000 years? Not that such was an impossibility, but rather that men should be impressed by the omnipotence of that they were called to worship as God. Well, some people don't believe in God. They think we just evolved from snails or monkeys. But if you look at the calendar dates and different things, that doesn't make sense. A lot of scientists said artificial intelligent creation. It just couldn't have evolved like that. It came out of nowhere. Boom. Mankind. The seventh day. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. Sorry about my reading. Because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. Alright, some more here. Just reading my highlighted portions. Why shouldn't God withdraw and rest? God had given his Son the divine images, even the pattern for his own material body. Is it any wonder, as Emilius looked about him, that he soon began to draw on that perfect image for the perfect created man body? Moving on to another highlighted portion. The Atlantean epoch lasted over a period of some 200,000 years. It was in the early part of that evolution that the Son of God, as Emilius, drew from himself the human body. So the Atlantean period was 200,000 years. Wow, that's a long time for Atlantis to have sprung up and evolved, and then at the end times breaking apart, sinking in the ocean. 200,000 years. Moving back down here to another highlighted paragraph. An overall plan for soul development or evolution as taken from the readings will be covered in the following chapter, along with some of the ramifications as they affect our understanding of the Christ consciousness and our relationship to the earth plane. It says earth plane again. Meanwhile, it should be noted that Cayce gave life readings wherein the individuals were stated to have lived upon the earth over 10 million years ago, long before the developments which led up to Amelius and the bringing forth of the 5 races. This latter event occurred around 1 million BC. So the entities could have lived before man were even created, but lived on the earth as entities, maybe? In the readings, Lemuria was also referred to as Mu, Og, the land of Oz, and was said to have occupied an area in the South American continent extending into Southern California and southwestern USA. It eventually broke up and submerged during the 3 widely spaced periods of Earth changes. Here we got Earth changes, which overlapped the emergence of the Atlantean culture and similar catastrophes that ultimately broke up and sank that continent. So that's interesting. Before Atlantis, there was another society, creation, continent. I got a little chart here. So 1 million years ago to 800,000 years ago, before Christ, was the Lemurian development. 500 before Christ, 1,000 years ago, Lemuria inundated by water, people scattered. 400 to 300 BC, Lemuria inhabited and civilization advanced. 250,000 years ago BC, second Lemurian catastrophe, possibly by fire. So it looks like the Lemurians were around for around 750,000 years. Be curious to see what they looked like. 200 BC before Christ, early Atlantean culture emerged. 80,000 years before Jesus, BC, first Atlantean disturbance. So between the Atlantean culture emerging in 200 BC and the beginning of the breakup of the continent was 120,000 years they lived. 28,000 BC, second Atlantean disturbance, recorded biblically as the Great Flood. So here, I guess they're saying the Great Flood was 28,000 years ago. 10,700 BC, final destruction and sinking of Atlantis. 10,390 BC, completion of the Great Pyramid in Egypt by the priest Ra-Ta and Hermes. So apparently this New Age material in these books here, New Encyclopedia of the Freemasons, let me take a look. Thought it might be interesting to check out this Ra that's mentioned in this book on the bottom there. Completion of the Great Pyramid in Egypt by the priest Ra-Ta Hermes. I've got quite a library of books, so let's look at this one first. The Egyptian temples. I've got a lot of reading to do, but in the meantime I can look at things. So I just looked up in the index Ra, and it says later the court had colonnades on all 4 sides with statues of Amenhotep III, Akhenaten, and Queen Tai set between the pillars. The colonnade on the north was known by the peculiar name Shadow of Ra. Some pictures in here. The Temple of Aton. Notice the sun and the rays. So what else does it say? Just a little curiosity thing here. Another place it talks about Ra. The cult of the pillar is not so common in Egypt. The cult of the pillar. As in other countries in the Eastern Mediterranean, the three chief deities so worshipped as Hathor, Osiris, the sun god, and those three Hathor is the only indigenous deity. The hieroglyphics of the Old Kingdom show the obelisk with a short shaft standing on a high square base. If you look around your city's square, most cities and towns have an obelisk downtown. Something strange about that. With a disc above the pyramid, while the sun temple of Abusir, there are still remains of the square base and the great obelisk of Ni-Uzur-Ra. So they have these monuments over there in the Middle East of these temples, and we're reading there in Edgar Cayce's book. And one more thing I found in this book, there's more in here, but I'm just trying to make this brief. I have some more research to do. A corridor surrounds the shrine, and from it open, cleave-in small rooms in a hidden secret chamber. These are called by various names as the Flame Room, the Throne of Ra, the Union of Two Lands, the Birth Room, and the Room of Resurrection. There's more in this book on Ra, but I have another book. Just because in Edgar Cayce's book they mention it, I thought I'd look it up. Egypt. Look at these beings. What does Edgar Cayce have to say about these beings? Who was alive during these times? Maybe even me in a past lifetime. Did I see these things? That'd be a curious thing to ask a psychic. What's real? Alright, here we got another one. Some more pictures here, and Ra mentioned. Look at these beings. It says here, the first sacred writings appeared with magical and religious formula related to the worship of the sun god, Ra and Osiris, Lord of the Dead. And you see the symbols of the sun everywhere these days, even in the Grammys and football halftime shows and different stage sets. Even on the US $1 bill, behind the eye are the sun rays. The eye is supposed to represent the god Horus. So what else is in this book here about Ra? You can see I just looked this up a few minutes ago. Found a couple things. Some nice pictures. Here's that temple they're mentioning. What does it say? The center relief, the one we just looked at, that building there with the big entryway. The relief shows the birth of Hathor, the great lady of Dendra. According to Egyptian mythology, the goddess was born from a few drops that fell to the ground from the eye of Ra when he emerged from the primordial chaos. He emerged from the primordial chaos. And one more. Some pictures and another thing that says Ra. Bottom right, the painting, which symbolizes the union of the gods Ra and Osiris, evokes the theme of death and the daily rebirth of the sun. The daily rebirth of the sun. when the sun rises. That's what it says there. There's the picture that's associated with it. Here's another picture. Is there something we should know? Do you think? Here's Edgar Cayce in a trance talking about Ra. In my Egyptian books, there's no shortage of information about Ra. Apparently, you see the snake. So yes, I've got more to study. Alright, so we just have a half a page left to go here to finish that chapter. And we'll do more on this book eventually. The last date is important in that it bridges the Atlantean culture to more recent times, and especially to structural evidences which are still available for archaeological studies. So when we look at this stuff from Egypt, we have a connection between the Atlanteans and Egypt, if you know a little bit about Atlantean history. Even back then, when the Atlanteans came to Egypt after the continent was sinking, according to my historical studies, the Atlanteans were pretty smart people technologically, and they were manufacturing, creating, with eugenics, genetics, cloning, different kinds of beings and beasts for slaves and sex slaves, grotesque beings. And it really horrified the Egyptians back then. And the war broke out between the Atlanteans and the Egyptians. And apparently the Atlanteans ceased and desisted from making those kinds of horrible creatures. FYI. We'll get into that eventually. We'll see what Edgar Cayce... Well, there's already been stuff in this book that I did in this video about grotesque creatures. Over 650 of the life readings given by Edgar Cayce touched on the Atlantean and Lemurian periods leading to the establishment in Egypt of much of the Atlantean culture. This period, dating back to some 12 to 13,000 years ago, according to the readings, once again brought together the entities Cayce as Ra-Ta, the high priest, and the master possibly as the legendary Hermes. But before going into that account, let us thread together some of the background and reasoning as given in the readings as it concerns to the subject of soul development, and therein the relationship between the universal Christ, Spirit, and the consciousness exemplified in the man Jesus, who thought his sacrifice and acceptance of the will of God became the Christ, who through his sacrifice, sorry about that. Alright, I've been reading for a couple hours. So it says here, who through his sacrifice, Jesus Christ's sacrifice, and acceptance of the will of God became the Christ. This final achievement, apparently, was the plan and pattern from the beginning. So all that we know was a plan. Lemuria, Atlantis, and the world we know it today. And it might just behoove us, in the world we live in that's in this book, and that would be the doesn't say what this is. The top right, the traffic on the modern Qasr El Nile Bridge. So I guess this is the bridge over at the Nile River. This must be the Nile River and the city over there in Egypt. So all this stuff with 911, my series Freemasonry and Satanism, psychic research, the Bible, remote viewing, everything seems to be connecting. Thank you for watching my video. Rick Marrico reporting.